one of the issues with the claim this therapy solves this kind of problem is a really funny finding, and you alluded to it a second ago. Most of the studies that compare approaches to therapy find pretty small differences between them. And also, the data suggests that our evidence based approaches and treatments, even though we've come up with so many of them, haven't improved that much over the years. And there's pretty limited evidence that any one treatment is much better than the others. And this gets to what are called common factors theory and some of the related research on it. So, what happens if you look at all of these different validated approaches, like the approaches in that list that I gave earlier, and ask yourself, wait a second, what is it about these different approaches that's delivering the value for a client? Is it specifically the technique of CBT or ACT or whatever else? Or is it something else? And it's possible that it's not so much specifically what's happening in ACT or IFS or whatever that's helping people, but rather a set of much more general things that affect the relationship between a clinician and their client. What are these common factors? For starters, one we've talked about all the time on the show, therapeutic alliance. This is the agreement, the bond, the connection between the therapist and their client. Goal consensus is a huge part of this. Like, do we agree on what our outcome targets are here? And do we agree about the amount of work that's expected to reach those outcome targets? Big common factor number 2, empathy. Number 3, positive regard. Fourth, genuineness, or what Carl Rogers called congruence. The client feels like the therapist is being real with them. Then a really interesting one, what are called therapist effects. And this is basically a polite way of saying, what if the therapist is really good or really bad at their job? In other words, the skill of the clinician. Another big one, expectations. What does the client expect to get out of the treatment? Are these expectations high? Turns out clients with high expectations tend to do a bit better. They expect to get a lot from treatment, so they end up getting more out of the treatment. Now, the question of treatment effects in the field is a really, really big one. There's a ton of research on it. And treatment effects are the differences between, say, ACT and IFS or CBT or DBT or whatever. This is a very, very, very complicated question, and I'm going to do a lot of simplifying here. Most of the things that assess the impact, most of the research that assesses the impact of any one treatment versus another, ranks treatment effects below everything else I just said. Ranks it below therapist effects, below genuineness, below positive regard and empathy, below the therapeutic alliance, in terms of the amount of work that it's doing in the room as therapy is happening. Now, Dad, I got to ask you, what do all of those factors have in common that I named? All of that stuff, congruence, empathy, positive regard, what does it all have in common?
Embodiment in Rick Hansen?
Humanism, baby. Humanism. That's what it's got. Oh, God. I had such a good punchline. And
Absolutely. My roots in Carl Rogers and
Carl Rogers humanism, baby.
The humanistic stance.
You could kind of argue that humanism won the research on common factors. That approach essentially won the research on what makes therapy work, which is a wild claim. And also kind of blows open.
This stuff. It's so interesting and cool.
And it also kind of blows open this idea of like, oh, are you sure I should do ACT for this? Are you sure I should do IFS for that? Are you sure I should do CBT for this thing over here? Or is it actually more important and more effective to find a clinician that can deliver all of those different humanistic qualities to you?
So, Forrest, my stereotype, I'm going to get in trouble here, but this has been said to me by multiple people who've gone to a CBT type therapist.
Sure.
If we were to think about the therapies that were on your list as having, mega RCT type.
A lot of RCT support,
research evidence for them. If we were to rank order them in terms of humanisticness, baked into
CBT, by the way, would be first by such a large margin in terms of like RCT support. Yeah.
But if we were just to kind of rank order them now on what you've been saying about...
You'd probably put CBT towards the bottom, yes.
Yeah, ain't that really interesting? So I wonder how you think about that.
Well, I think that you can have a good therapist or a bad therapist that does almost anything. I think that there is a lot of stereotyping inside of the field about the kind of person, the kind of clinician who gets into a particular sort of therapy. You can see this if you go to like even talking about ancient technology, Facebook groups for different like
Yeah.
methods of therapy or like subreddits on Reddit for different methods of therapy. There's a lot of team thinking. I'm on the CBT team,
Yeah.
I'm on the IFS team,
Yeah.
I'm on the ACT team, whatever
Yeah.
it is. And that team based thinking can lead to a lot of stereotyping about the kind of person who gets into one modality versus the
Yeah.
other. So I just say that to kind of like tap the brakes a little bit on kind of what you're saying here, Dad. I think that it's easy for us to think in that way, but I go back and forth about it.
Yeah. And I don't want to be biased here and to make a point that you're very aware of, the sheer quantity of studies on CBT, which a lot have to do with the fact that it's quite easy to study compared to many
Yes.
other therapies. The
Yes.
quantity itself does not equal a validation of its quality
Of effect
compared to
size
other
or whatever else.
treatments.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And often when CBT is used as because CBT is so validated, it's often used as a kind of quote unquote control, a treatment
Yeah.
as usual group
Yeah.
for studies that are looking at, say, ACT, for example. Steve Hayes has done a fair amount of work on comping ACT to CBT in a variety of different ways. And typically, again, these other approaches tend to perform as well. It
Yeah.
depends about specific issues, and I don't want to overclaim about that. But that is something that's found, yeah.
So it sounds like the practical takeaway for the person listening,
Yeah.
right, for themselves, or listening on behalf of others, depending on their roles, it would be, well, given that these various treatments are roughly equivalent, for maybe particular disorders, you look for variables like convenience, cost,
Fit.
and who's most what's the most humanistic, quote unquote, therapist you can find
I think you
in
can
a
make a real
treatment
argument.
that's fairly convenient for you.
Yeah, and I want to be a little careful about that because we're in the bag for humanism. So I want to be transparent about
Yeah.
our biases here. But man, you can make a compelling argument for it.